Hey guys, this is Sloan at BA Carts, and you just clicked on our instructional installation video for our level 3 signature sound system, a premier audio system we make for the D5 Plus. If you want to watch a step-by-step long video on how to install this system, you're on the right video. But if you just want to see the specs and features of this sound system, go back one page to our main page on YouTube and click on the informational specs video for the level 3 signature system. But with that, let's get to installation. Okay, first step in installing the level 3 signature system is removing a bunch of stuff from the cart to do the installation. And you're just gonna really need a panel popper and a Phillips bit on your driver. So first and simple step is remove your cushions. Then take your Phillips bit, remove those 2 screws from your glove box and pull that guy out. Then I'm gonna take my small screwdriver. If you can make panel poppers work, do that, but I'm taking my small flathead screwdriver and I'm popping these speaker grills covers out. So pop that one out. Pop that one out. Then we need to remove the center pod body. For this, you're gonna have screws here and here, here and here. You're gonna have push pins up here, which we already removed them in their written instructions and I couldn't find them, so they're not in here. There's normally 3 push pins right here. You have to use panel poppers to remove those 3 push pins. And then you will more than likely have screws down here that you won't be able to access until we remove the speaker enclosures. So let me show you how that works. So Phillips bit again, and you're gonna have screws holding the grill to the speaker enclosures. You wanna pull those screws out. You'll have, again, some of this cart has less screws in it because for the sake of the speed of the video, we're trying not to have everything in there, so there's only some screws in some of these parts. Then you will have screws on the outside. You'll have 5 screws on the outside going around. You will remove those screws. Again, these are not the screws that the speaker is connected to. It's just the speaker enclosure. So now, this should theoretically be loose now after removing those 5 screws around there and the screws from the grill. Then you'll have your crossover box on the back side of your enclosure. You will take this off, take those screws out. And this will be plugged in. Unplug that one. And now you have one enclosure. We will get back to that. Then we go, again, you'll be able to see if you have screws down here. You can tell right there, there was a screw. It just had been removed for us doing installations on this cart before. So now we go to this side. Again, remove the screws from the grill. Then remove the outside screws holding the enclosure to the body. Should be able to pop this back now. This will be plugged in as well, so you want to unplug this so this can completely come free from the cart. We will need those later. Then you need to unplug the grills entirely. So 2 connectors per grill. And if I'm going a little fast for you, I'll tell you a little trick on YouTube. On the bottom right side, you can actually, or if I'm going too slow, you can make this go 3/4 speed, half speed, 1.5 speed, 2 times speed. You can adjust the speed of the video. So we can cater to all people, because I am going a little fast. So once your screws are removed from down inside the pod and all that, then you'll have to remove these screws that are by your seatbelt. So I already had only one on that side, so you'll have 4 screws in total by the seatbelts. And some of these, you'll want to keep most of this. So we have ourselves a nice little screw box here. Now I will tell you this, the long, skinny silver screws that were in the grills, make sure you keep those exact ones. We won't use most of the other screws from the speaker enclosures. We won't use much of those. But the long, skinny silver ones you took out of these, you will need those. So then once all screws and push pins have been removed, you should be able to just lift up on this, like so, and pull it out. Now one thing to be careful of, as you're pulling it out, you're gonna see right here, these gold push pins, quick pins, sorry. Make sure you're not losing these. And if they fall out, that means they're not clamped tight enough. I would take some cutters and clamp them even tighter then. But yeah, do not lose those. You need those to put the body back together. So I'm going to sit this body here out of the way for now. And then you have your crossover box here. So you have your 2 enclosures you removed from your center pod. The only thing you need from these is your wires. That's it. You don't need the enclosure, you don't need the speaker, nothing. So what you want to do is cut this as close to the speaker box as possible. Cut that, bam, that's it. You want to cut those, you need to keep these. Keep the wires, don't need the enclosures anymore. So those are gone. Okay, now we are going to run our 2 harnesses. Audio signal harness, power harness. You'll need wire cutters, zip ties. And we're going to start with the audio signal wire first. So what you want to do is unroll this guy out. Now again, this one is the XK Glow version. So it has the XK Glow connector. And then you have your bass knob here as well. Bass knob wire, I should say. So we're going to start with this end. And if you want to, and I wouldn't be opposed to this because this bass knob connector can be kind of frail because it's like an RG6 Cat 5 type of connector. I would recommend, honestly, maybe taping this back. Just so the XK Glow one's not going to get hurt. But there's a little tooth on this connector that I wouldn't really want to hurt. So tape that off. And we're going to start by feeding this down. Now we're going to try to get as much good angles filming this underneath as possible. It's just kind of hard with lighting and under the cart to let you know exactly where you're trying to run the wire to. But you'll see we're trying to tuck this wire up underneath the cart. So we're going down the dash. There's plenty of room right on the right side of the steering column frame. And we're going to push this down in there. And then we don't want this to fall out. So we don't want to keep pulling this wire, then pull the other end all the way down the floor. So just for the sake of this not falling out, we're going to zip tie this right about where it needs to go. So it's going to end right around here. So, just to keep that from falling all the way out. I don't want that to fall out. So now we ran it down. So now we're going to get underneath. We want to make sure that it's coming between the plastic frame and the frame. And then we want to run it alongside all the wiring. There's a bunch of wires running from the dash all the way back to the cart. If you can't tell exactly what I'm doing, just run it with all the wires that are already running to the back side of the cart. Run with all those. So, and you always want to stay above the frame wherever you possibly can. Don't run under the frame. Always stay above the frame. And you will have one wire that's teeing off which is your subwoofer connector. This will tee off close to where the center pod is at, so you can run that wire up. So I'm going to run this along Again, I'm not going under the frame. So I did not go under the frame there, I went above the frame. I'm just gonna keep running this above the frame alongside the rest of the wires. And then this is gonna go, and by the way, we're on the passenger side of the cart right now. Passenger side of the cart, the wire stays on the passenger side of the cart the entire time. And I run that all up there. And then you're probably best off coming this side now.
Yeah.
Then sub connector. Got our sub connector. There's a hole right here under the center pod and under the front seat. I'm gonna poke my sub connector up there. And if the wire is kind of staying tucked up in there, don't worry about zip tying it yet. We have more wires to run, so like the power connector, power wire. So we'll zip tie everything up once we ran the power wire. So that's all been ran alongside the wires, and I ran it, kept it as high as I possibly could the whole time. And I ran it back here to the rear of the cart. So now,
Hold on, just gotta get up.
so now I got my signal wire right there. So to make sure it doesn't fall down, I'm gonna zip tie that up as well. Then let's try to use this light a little better. Now, signal wire's been ran. We have all this stuff in the dash. We'll run those to where they need to go in the dash after we ran our power harness. So now power harness, we're gonna also start with the connector side. So this is gonna go down the hole. This is gonna go down the hole that you just ran your sub harness down. Up through, I should say. So run that through there. Again, we don't want this to all fall out. So I'm gonna zip tie this where it needs to be long enough where it can connect to both terminals of your battery. So and if you want to, zip tie the sub harness with it as well. So we got the sub harness. Those are probably long enough for the battery, so we're good there. And we're gonna run this right alongside the harness we just ran. The audio signal wire. So again, always staying above the frame. Right alongside the rest of the wiring. Then back up on top of the cart. Reach down in here. I'm going to pull this. Here. So now we should have, and now you can untape what you taped around your signal wire harness. So that's okay now. So now you have power connector, harness, audio signal harness, bass knob, XK glow, that's all right here. We had our zip tie here holding this wire up. And again, that will need to be zip tied. And I'm gonna run these through the dash now, and then we're gonna go through the whole cart and zip tie all those wires up to the frame underneath. And for the sake of the video, you don't need to watch me do that. You just want to zip tie those wires, those harnesses up alongside on top of the frame, not underneath the frame, on top of the frame. and right alongside the rest of the factory OEM wiring. Then you want to look at this harness in the dash. You will have your volume control plug that'll plug into the volume control after we plug the volume control in. If you have XK Glow, you'll have a switch for XK Glow. Then you have FR, which stands for front right speaker, and FL, which stands for front left. So front right, we're gonna run, this one's super simple. It just runs down alongside the frame here. Just reach in there and pull that guy out. This one is a little more complicated. There's like a certain section in the frame you're never gonna be able to see without with the camera. And you have to run this in a very specific spot to reach the hole. You might have to use a light. Again, this is, I try to take the picture of this as well as good as I can in the written instructions, but okay. Now that you got those ran, we need to zip tie this harness up in the dash properly. So right alongside other wires in here, so it doesn't fall out. Zip tie this down. Be careful when you're doing this. It's very common for people to unplug their USB. It's like right now, this USB isn't even, the USB port, if you ever use a USB port, not the charger, the port. It's very easy to unplug that. Right here's the port. It got unplugged just by messing with this right in here. So be careful of that. Also, the yellow RCAs, this is for your backup camera. People constantly unplug this on accident when they're in the dash because it just slides apart that easily. If that slides apart, you will not have a backup camera anymore. So if none of that works, after you install the system, it's not the system's fault, it's that you unplug something. We've got all that done. Make sure these wires come out the speaker holes, and we got these harnesses. We will not need anything to do with these. Before we install the speakers now, we have to install the power harness. So what we're gonna do here is we're going to remove the rubber ground cover from the battery. We're going to take the black wire that's labeled negative from the power harness we just ran through the cart. I'm gonna run this through. So I'm putting my ground wire through the rubber cover. Then I'm gonna take my 13 millimeter wrench and remove this bolt. Then how I like to do it, I like to put this so the wire, that side that it's crimped to, is on the front side first. So we'll go here, through this, and then tighten that back down. Now, of course, make sure you're keeping this cover on right now because we're touching the ground of the battery. Don't want to shock yourself. Tighten this back down, making sure both harnesses are staying somewhat straight together. That way we can put the cover back over top. Keeping those in a straight line together. I would recommend using hand tools in the battery. You don't want to be using an impact drill or anything like that and, you know, ruining the threads inside the battery's terminal. So now that is ran, and as you can see, if this is ran through the rubber cover, you can completely cover that with your harness, so in the rubber cover. So now, this is what you want to be careful of when you're touching the positive terminal of the battery. You don't want to be touching like the frame or anything like that. Just want to touch the bolt. Don't be touching bolts in the frame or anything like that, because then you could possibly shock yourself. So using 13 millimeter wrench as well, removing this. Now that's removed. We can touch this. It's not connected to the battery anymore. We're going to shove our power portion of the harness through. We're going to do this the same way. So the side the wire's crimped on goes away from the power terminal eyelet. You might get a little spark like that. Not a big deal. Finger tighten that down. Keep your wires in a straight line. And run your cover up. That easy. Again, make sure your wire zip tied well. Then we have our sub harness hanging out here. That can just hang out for now. And then we have our connectors that plug in the speakers. So, power harness is installed. Now it's time to install your speakers. So we're gonna start with the dash speakers. You're gonna open your GC52 signature speaker box up. All these little quick thread things, snaps, we do not need these. We just need the screws. What we're gonna do is, this is an XK Glow system. So besides just plugging the audio connector in, you'll also have the XK Glow connector to plug in as well. So plug that in. Then when you're resting the speaker in the hole, you want to make sure the wires are not the connectors are not behind. You want to make sure they're to the side. So pushing those to the side, sitting that up nice and however which way you want to do it, make sure it's perfectly up and down, square. Then sitting your grill on that. Your grill, these holes will line up with the holes in the speaker. So once we got that on, and screw your speaker down. Audio connector, XK Glow connector. Again, make sure the connectors are to the side, not behind, not directly behind. Now we're going to swap out the rear speakers first, and then we will finish up with the center pod. So need my Phillips bit on my driver here, and I'm going to remove the long shiny screws from the grill, so that comes out. Then do not remove the screws around this time. You're only removing the screws from the speaker itself. Now that might be a little difficult to pop out, so if you need like a panel popper or small flathead screwdriver, you can get your screw in there and pop that out. Then, this might be kind of hard to pull. You just want to cut this right at the speaker, as close as you possibly can. Just cut the wire right off. Pulling this, now this wire is all caught up back here. If you look back here, all this wiring is right here. You might have to undo some zip ties and things to free some of this up. To pull on that wire a little more. So you have, because you already need just a little bit of this to crimp on your new speakers. So pull that out and then grab one of your PRX4 speakers. So take this out here. You should have a little wiring harness like so. You have your wiring harness just like this. You don't need these screws. You have little terminals. Black goes to black, orange goes to orange. So push that down on there. Make sure you're pushing it down inside the actual terminal. So once you're on there, it should not come out. Then we want to take wire strippers. Strip this wire in the back, crimp that down. Orange goes to red. All looks good there. If you want to, get as much excess that you can bundle up because the wire is a little long. Bundle that up. Snap them into place and then remount the new speaker down with the screws you just pulled out of the old speaker. Do all 4 screws. Then make sure, and this is what I was talking about, the play you'll have on the wiring through back here. It's a little tight because of this harness is right between the frame and the center pod. So you want to make sure these wires are in this channel, inside the channel when you're doing this. So put that back up. You can look at the holes when you're doing this to line them up properly. So we got a hole right here. I'm gonna line that up. Making sure the wires, the RGB, LED, and tweeter wires are inside that channel. Overdo this, because you can break the grill if you over tighten it. So don't do that. So now that side's done. do those exact same steps to replace the speaker on the other side. Alrighty, so now to install the front speakers into your center pod so the sub can fit, you will need the connectors that you cut off your speaker pods earlier. So you need both of those. You'll need your speaker rings, and you will have some short stinger screws, as well as you will have some short self-tapping screws with this. That's what you will need to do this. You'll have speaker rings, and then you will need the PRX speakers out of this box as well. Now, just to make sure we're on the same page, you only have to do this on the center pod that the speakers are going in, that the sub's going in on a 4-passenger. You technically, that's all you have to do. This does not have to be done on every speaker pod. Only the one where the sub is going is where you have to put these rings in. What they are is adapters. It's getting rid of the enclosures so your sub actually has room to mount. So you do not need the grills in your PRX speakers, so nor do you need the screws for those. So okay, so just like before, take these little guys right here, push these down on the speaker, so black goes to black, orange goes to orange. Strip the coating off both ends. The red goes to orange, black goes to black, so black. You probably want to get closer, Kaylee. You're not close enough to see anything I'm doing. Orange goes to red. Crimp that down. Orange, red. Black to black. Okay. Now, what we want to do, slide our speaker in. They're going to be crooked no matter what you do because it's how the factory speakers install. So we make sure we get this done correctly. What we're going to first do, see how these have notches. You want to make sure the notch lines up with the notch on the frame, on the body here, but you also want to make sure that the holes line up as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to need some of these short screws here. And you're going to take this grill, we're going to mount it from the back side. And this can flip this way or this way. And you'll instantly know if the notch doesn't line up at all with the screw holes, then you got it wrong. So we got that ring cracked away. But what we have to remember first is to take your grill and put that in this notch first. Make sure this is all lined up correctly. So my outside holes are lining up. So again, I'm going to be on these larger outside holes. So make sure that's lining up. Put that screw in, line all these holes up, and put all 5 of those screws through. So now this grill should be totally free. It's not getting pinched anywhere. Then take our speaker, doesn't matter which side, and mount it in the diagonal holes. So in other words, the diagonal holes. So the speaker's not like this. The speaker's like at a diagonal. What you want for this is your self-tapping screws. So take these guys and screw those down. They're self-tappers. If you want to, make sure you can push better. I'm pushing on the back side of the ring as I'm pushing really hard to screw the speakers down. So now that speaker's on there still. Again, this should be able to move freely. And now what you want is the long, skinny silver screws you took out of your grill earlier. And you want to line this up, make sure you're not getting these wires pinched anywhere silly. And then I'm gonna line this guy up. You can actually look inside the grill if you want at the open holes. And then screw this down. It sucks the grill down. It can break the grill if you over tighten it. So you just want to get to the point that it's tight, sealed around the edge, and that's it. You do not want to keep pushing it in, because eventually it'll snap the grill if you drill it in too tightly. So that one's done. Now we're going to do the other side. Okay, so when your center pod's officially done, it'll look just like so. And again, you can refer to our written instructions if you want to see some pictures. But you have all three connectors, just like so, as you did before. Just no speaker enclosure anymore, just your grills. Now we could set this and plug this in right now, but we don't want it to be in the way of our connect sub mounts and all that stuff with the subwoofer. So let's set that out of the way for now. What you're going to need is Phillips bit on driver, 13 or 1/2 inch socket, 2 self-tapping screws that are provided with your subwoofer mounts. Subwoofer mounts, don't confuse this with your power plate mounts. Power plate mounts are the same size as the power plate. These looks like so. So we're gonna take these over. These 2 bolts right here, I'm just gonna remove these. And take our mount. The long side goes up. So this is where it mounts to the frame. This goes up. So set this down here. Now, I'm not gonna get this. I'm barely finger tight. Nothing crazy. We want some play in this mount. We don't want it to be fully tight yet. So that one's mounted. Now we do the passenger side. Obviously, tall side goes up, so set that in here as well. And I guess I should explain too, this is the interior side. So it doesn't go like this, where you can see the bend. It goes like this. So the flat part, put it this way, the horizontal flat part is on the outside. And again, if you need pictures, our written instructions have pictures. Again, just getting this kind of not crazy tight, just kind of snug. Okay, so now you can see 2 holes here, because I already drilled 2 holes in this with these screws earlier when I was doing written instructions. But we want to take our crossover box, and what we want to do, depends how you want to do it. Get this closer off there. I want to mount this crossover box as low as possible to this strut. I have a little marker on this that shows how low the sub sits. What you want to do is just make sure that this crossover box is sitting as low as possible, and you want to use your self-tapping screws and you want to screw this to the sub. Again, do it as low as possible so it's not interfering with the sub. So once we got that down, we screw it down. Just 2 screws, that's really all you need. As long as it's tight and it's not, also when you're doing this, zip tie down, not going anywhere. Make sure it's not pulling really hard on this, or you don't want to zip tie it so it's pulling on these wires really hard. So with that being said, I'm not gonna be a hypocrite here. I don't like how that was pulling on it. I don't want that to pull in the wire. You don't want the connectors to be like pulling off of the crossover box. You want them to be encouraged to be plugged in. So that looks a lot better. Alrighty, one of the most exciting parts of the install is installing your stealth sub. So you will have hardware already at the end of your sub enclosure. You'll need to remove all 4 of these bolts. Then you will need 11mm or 7/16 ratchet wrench preferred, 13mm 1/2 inch socket, and you will have some foam. You will have plenty of foam, I promise you, because your package is gonna have a lot of foam around all the products. Use some of this, cut a nice sheet off just like so of the thin stuff. If you don't have any thin stuff for some reason, make it thin, but you need some stuff that's like 1/8 inch thick, and that's gonna go on top of your battery. You only need foam if you have certain batteries where the sub's dang near touching it. So this cart has a 105, orange 105. It's a super tall battery, and the sub's really, really, really close to touching the battery. And with the flex of the enclosure, once it's playing at full tilt, it can barely touch the battery and make a noise. But if you have foam in the mix, it doesn't make the noise. So keep that in mind, and you can play that by ear while you're installing the sub. If it has 1/4 of an inch between the battery and the sub, then you're fine. But if it's a 1/16 of an inch, like this cart is, then you want some foam in there. The L side that goes down will go on the driver's side of the cart. So I'm gonna sit this in here. And before I forget, I'll sit my foam. Now you wanna sit your foam in an area where you can't see it after it's installed. So I'm gonna sit it. So if I'm looking at it from above, I won't be able to actually see that. So set that down in here. So now, as you can see, get your holes lined up here. And this is why we didn't make the sub mounts super tight yet. It's because we want some play in them. So now, get those finger tighten these. We want to make sure everything's got some play in it. Those are just finger tight. The mounts are just finger tight. What we want to do is let's tighten the mounts down first. Now the mounts have slotted holes. So there's a lot of play left to right, front to back. So keep that in mind. But what we want to do is make sure that this sub is parallel inside of here. Make sure this is parallel inside the center pod. So I'm also going to be pushing down so it's mounting as low as possible. I'm going to take my 7/16 or 11mm wrench. And again, see how there's a little gap right here right now, but there's not over there. I want to slide it around and start to tighten. You don't want to get crazy with this. It's just threads installed in wood, so you don't want to get too crazy. Run it through that gap inside the frame. Pull our connector down, pull the cover off, plug her in, just like so. Center pot, And we can sit this in here. Now, find those wires, all those connectors that were plugged in before. So all three of these connectors, and plug them in. And don't worry, they're all differently, so you can't screw up how they're plugging in. They all go to their female to male connector. So just like so. We'll do the other side. You have to reach up under your sub to locate them. So now, if you want to tape all that wiring up, you're more than welcome to. But I'm going to slide that body panel back in. I'm not going to fully mount it down yet. I want to test everything on this system before everything is 1000% done. So I'm just going to sit it there. But now you can see speakers aren't hitting the sub, and it's just resting there for now. We're just going to keep it there for now. Everything's plugged in, so it'll start playing. But yes, we're going to get most of it installed, but leave some things undone so we can do some tuning, testing, and all that stuff. So, alrighty, now it's time to install your HD power plate. So, to make sure we are not getting each other confused, this is how this works. You have your one small mount for your HD power plate. This will go like so. So, a little bolt hole goes a little bolt hole. And I'm trying to make sure I'm not confusing myself. We're going to take the provided hardware and this one can be fully tightened if you'd like. So for the sake of it looking good. Oh, one very, very important detail. The mount goes on the inside of it, not the outside, the inside. You need to get closer so you can see. So it goes on the inside, not outside, inside. So then we do this, slide balls through. Put that on. And again, you're more than welcome to fully tighten this down as you're doing this. So, got that, then so I'm making sure everything sits flat. I'm pushing the mount down so it's against the top of the power plate. Okay, so now we still have this mount and these longer bolts. I'm gonna sit this over on the cart. So we have it over there. Then, take my wrenches with me. We're gonna need a Phillips screwdriver, Phillips bit for your drill. And here's what we gotta do. These 3 screws right here need to come out. This is the rear of your cart. This is right beside your seat belt mounts. So remove those 3 machine screws. Then the 2 machine screws on the driver's side of the cart need to come out. Not all 3. The one over there on the passenger side can stay. These 2 need to come out. So that's like that. Now, just to make sure I'm emphasizing this, underneath here there are speed clips clicked inside the frame. It's going to be very hard to see them. You can probably see them maybe a little bit through the camera, but what we do is we're going to slide this power plate up underneath there, and you got to make sure you're pulling up on the power plate when you're doing so you're not hitting those speed clips out of the way. But before I get ahead of myself, let me explain a couple things underneath this power plate, because you won't be able to see it after you have it installed. There's a wire here with labels 62, 13. This will plug into a USB charger, connectors in the very back. It's not really a USB charger anymore, it's just spare 12 volt connectors back there. So you've got this. And if you also want to as well, if you don't want to worry about cutting this off, you don't have to. If you have any type of feedback noise possibility, what this is a ground strap. And this can touch bolts on your frame and it can help some noise. It can help alleviate noise if you have noise. It's up to you how you want to do it. If you just want to leave it there zip tied, not touch it, and then only have to worry about it if you have noise, you can do that. But just for the sake of the video, we're going to cut that off. So let's cut the zip tie off. So we have our ground strap here. And if it feels like it's a little long, you can undo this wiring gland and you can shove the ground strap so you don't have a bunch of excess. You can actually do this on both wires. You can shove it back in there if you really want to. So we got all that, and let me show you real quick where that plugs into. So on the rear side, you've got this right here. So this is zip tied to the rear side. That's the wires that are labeled 6213 are going to plug into these that are also labeled 62 and 13. Okay, so what we're going to do, grab this. You want the receptacles to be facing the passenger side, which is where your harnesses came out at. So receptacles facing passenger side. And what you do is we sit this down in here. What we want to do is we lift up. Once we get this underneath the body, you lift up and push. Keep pushing up so you're not pushing those speed clips out of the way. Those speed clips are very important to keep retaining there. So push it up until your holes are lining up, and then start one screw at a time. Start that one. You might notice you have to pull up a couple more times just to get stuff uncaught from each other, because they can get caught in the speed clips. Okay, now you want to make sure this is slid all the way towards the driver's side. So I'm on the driver's side of the cart right now. I'm sliding it, that's why these holes are so slotted. I'm making sure I can slide it all the way towards me. So now those are not fully tightened yet. I just barely tightened them so they're started. Then we take this mount and again, this will be on the interior side. So it doesn't go on the outside, it goes on that side. So I'm gonna slide this through. Again, making sure I'm pushing up the whole time when I'm doing this to make sure my speed clips aren't getting pushed out of the way. And then I'm gonna line them up. Start those, don't even tighten them. Then take my bolts and nuts. And I'm gonna push it up. Again, making dang sure that the mount's on the interior side of the power plate. And I like to do the bolt from the inside to out, so all you see is the bolt, you don't see the nut. I'm gonna finger tighten those. Okay, so then we had our 6213. I should have cut that zip tie earlier. I did not. To free up the 6213s, now I got to cut it from underneath. You wouldn't have to do this if you would have done this before. So now we freed that up. You want to grab your wires coming out and the wire that's labeled 13. Pull pull the green coating back. So black is 13, and black will plug into the connector labeled 13. Then take your label here and plug this in. This is wire label 62. Plug this in to the crimp labeled 62. And I'd recommend pushing the green back up to the crimp, and then we tape over that with electrical tape. So I'm gonna take a little bit of electrical tape here. And tape right over that. Tape them together. So now those are taped together. Again, if you want to do this, it'd probably make a little more sense to try to do all this before you mount the power plate down. You just want to make sure you're resting the power plate somewhere so it's not scratching anything. And then when you're doing your tape, you just want to make sure that it's not going to allow that to happen. You don't want that to happen. You want the crimps to be taped together. So, like so. And then don't forget we have our ground strap still coming out. So, got our ground strap there. Don't let that just hanging. Don't forget we have that. So I'm just gonna, for now, I'm just gonna drape it here so we don't forget about it. And then, so that 6213 wires aren't just hanging out, I'm gonna take these and I'm gonna zip tie these right here to the frame, the same part of the frame they were already zip tied to. So those are zip tied down. Now, if you'd like to, making sure again, this is all towards the driver's side as far as possible, we can finish tightening these down. And then take our wrenches and tighten the mount that's on the front side of the power plate. There's my fancy little slot right there in the mount to get to it. There is a lot of play there. So if you notice that you're getting, like these are kind of separated from each other, feel free to mount the bolts down first on the mount, then mount the screws down, because there's so much play here that, you know, and just make sure everything's parallel together. That all looks really good. So now the very simple part, and the whole essence of kind of what we do is being plug and play. We have our fancy, very expensive Amphenol 12-pin connector here. You will see that there's an arrow on top. There's an arrow on top. There's also an arrow on top of the receptacle. You have to make sure that the arrows are going right towards each other. Click it in, it'll spin and click just like so. And to undo it, you just gotta spin this to unrelease it. So when you're doing it, you just like that. The sub connector plugs into the LCI2 right there. Then if you have XK Glow, this will be just this connector will just be for your front speakers. So you'll only have this connector in your harness if you chose our front speaker package. So plug that in. If you have any, don't let the grease come out, just get rid of that. We have gallons of that crap around here. Use XK Glow every day. So I don't love how this looks. I don't like how it's tweaking that so badly. It's like really putting a bind on it. So I want to make sure that whatever way this gets zip tied up, So kind of like so. That looks a lot better being that way. Then I'll finish zip tying all that up underneath there, but I just don't like how that was on the bad bind. So now, very easy part is power connector. That's easy, that easy. Now to make sure these aren't in a crazy bind, I'm gonna zip tie these up in a nice way. So we're gonna go through here. Zip tie that up. Now again, there's a bunch of extra XK Glow right here. This cart already has XK Glow ran through it for pictures and videos. We're not doing XK Glow in these instructions because they are very hard to, for the picture. We have written instructions. We have full written instructions with pictures for XK Glow. But as far as filming that, it's very hard to see what I'm doing on camera. So we do not do XK Glow in this video. So that's where all these extra wires are at. And they're just zip tied they just look like crap right now. That's not how they actually look when we're all done with the finished cart or product. Again, they were just drawn up real fast just for pictures and videos. So that's kind of what you're seeing here. But zip tie these wires in a way so it looks clean. And then make sure you're not forgetting anything that's underneath. You know, like right now, just for the sake of not forgetting about it, the harnesses are kind of drooping up underneath. So I'm gonna grab here and I'm gonna zip tie this up to the frame and onto the OEM wiring. Okay. So power plate's installed. We now only have the volume control to do, and then we have the sub control to do. This will have a ton of excess on it, especially if it's a 4-passenger. We'll leave excess on it. That way you can put the sub knob wherever the heck you want. Hide it, wherever, whatever you want to do with it. Also, you don't have to plug this in if you don't want to. If you don't want it at all, if you don't want sub control, you can just unplug it from the LC2i there and just leave this unplugged and no harm, no foul. It won't cause any issues. But if you want gain control on your sub, which I recommend doing, it's great to have, then this has plenty of excess. So you can put it in either glove box, you can put it anywhere the heck you want. We're gonna put it in the center glove box. Alrighty, so we are down to volume control, bass control, and then we have to install the LED switch if you have LEDs. So how I'm going to do the volume control install is I want to put it underneath the dash, and we have to drill a hole to do so. So I need a drill, I need a 9/32 drill bit. So we'll pop that guy in there. Now, to do a retrofit mount, whatever the heck you want to call it, how we're going to get ready to do this one, is we're going to be poking the knob through the dash. So I have to take the knob off. It just comes right off. It slides right off. And then I need to take needle noses, and I got to twist this guy off. Take needle noses, twist that off. If you want to, you can use a wrench for that as well. I believe it's a 10mm wrench. It is a 10mm wrench. How about that? So do that. Then what you want to do is pop this cover off. So if you want to use something proper, like panel poppers, we can slide this little guy in here. You want to slide that out. Pop it just off, just like that. So now it's all exposed. And you keep track of your washer and your nut you just pulled off of there. So this is one of my favorite ways to do it. We have, in our written instructions, we have 3 ways you can do it. You can install it, this whole thing under the dash, where you see all this whole thing. I'm not much of a fan of that because it doesn't look as clean, and you have to drill a bigger hole. So you can install just this whole thing, or you can poke this through a hole, and all you see is the knob. And you can do it underneath the cart. You can also do it in the high-low switch hole instead. That takes a little bit more of the install, but again, we have written instructions for all this. But I'm just going through one of 3 options on the install. So on drilling the hole, we've already done this hole drilling in this dash, but I want to install it right here. So I already drilled that hole. It's a 9/32 drill bit. Make sure you remember that. And before you do that, make sure you're not drilling anything. Look from over top the dash first. Make sure you're not drilling any wires when you're drilling your hole. And also keep in mind, if you want to do the volume control there, and you also have LEDs, keep in mind that you're gonna have to also put that LED switch somewhere as well. If you wanna put them nice besides each other so it's both kind of hidden, be my guest. Well, we will probably do something close to that where both are kind of hidden underneath the dash. And I'm gonna show you how to install this LED connector, or LED switch. So, but we got that guy on there. So now we're done with that drill bit. Volume control is an extremely easy part of this video. I need my needle noses. Actually, I'm just gonna take my actual 10 millimeter wrench this time. My washer nut. Yeah, I do not need this anymore. Don't need that anymore. And then come over here. Let's install this guy. So, I'm going to poke. I'll tell you what, it might be a little easy if I get off the cart first. I'm going to poke this through this hole down here. Then put my washer and nut on here. And use my wrench. You don't gotta get nothing crazy tight, just a volume control. I'm gonna turn this all the way to the left, so counterclockwise. Then you got this little knob or line on your knob. Sounds sexual. Take your knob and I'm gonna put it at the bottom. So if I crank it, now the knob is turning. And the line on the knob, I should say, is turning. So now that's installed, flush mounted in there real nice and neatly, like that. Then, to plug it in, what you want is, you will find a 6-pin connector coming out of your screen, labeled 90, 91, 92, 93. And it'll also say be labeled A and B. So you'll see, be labeled A and B. So you can see right there, A and B. Unplug that from male connector from the female connector. Then both of those plug into your volume control. Now, on this type of connector coming out of the volume control, if you look here, if some of the pins aren't perfectly straight, they can move during shipping, they can move while we're messing with the wiring harness. If none of those are straight, take something sharp and small and straighten the gold pins out. They should be perfectly straight inside the connector. And if they are, they'll slide in very easily. You want to make sure the tooth is clicking into the connector. Then you have a 3-pin Dutch connector coming out of your volume control. And you have this male connector, Dutch pin connector, coming out of the audio signal harness we ran earlier in the video. That plugs into like that. And now that is fully installed. Now, of course, when this is all getting buttoned up and done, we'll zip tie all this together so it looks really clean. But we still have the base knob to do and the LED button to do. So let's install the LED button. So the LED button takes a 31/64 drill bit. So 31/64. We're gonna install that right by the volume control. I'm making sure I got room where it's going. You know what? I'm gonna install it. Tell you what, come to this side, Keely. I'm gonna show you. I wanna put it where it's somewhere flat. I don't wanna do it somewhere where it's at an angle. So I'm gonna put it right here. So don't have to drill really deep in there. Just put a hole in there. That's good enough. If you want to just stay on that side, let me show you. Take my nut then and rubber seal from the back. And I'm going to thread that on. Then take needle noses or a 14 wrench, whatever one you can get in there easier. I don't really know. For the sake, 14 worked out pretty good there. I just put it in an angle and twisted it. Then take your connector and plug it in. I'm going to, before we do this sub knob, I'm gonna tidy up some of this wiring. Do my wire cutters, zip ties. Just making sure everything's not gonna be falling out of the dash. You don't want to put extremely hard kinks in wires and things, nothing like that. Just going through here. So then we still have our base control wire. How I like to do this is I like to just put it right there in the center glove box. And what we did is you'll have a little baggie on your base knob with really small screws to screw it down. So these little guys. And I had already drilled a hole in the glove box. So right here I drilled a hole in the side of the glove box. And I want to run the wire up through there. So I'll tell you what, just for this, let's do that first. So I drilled my hole in my glove box there on the left side, driver's side. I'm gonna poke that guy up through there and plug her in. It's a little too high up. You can see it. Then I'm going to screw this guy down right above the hole. Take my little screws. Again, you can put this wherever the heck you want. Don't care. The left side of the gain knob has slotted holes. So you can start these screws. You can mark your screw hole first if you want to, and then start them, and then slide the gain into place. So I slid into place, and I'm gonna tighten this down. You'll need a short, small, stubby screwdriver for this. We provide 4 screws for the sake of the video. Just keep it moving. I'm not gonna put all 4 in. It gets pretty dang tight with just 2. I mean, it's not, again, it's just a knob, so you don't have to go crazy. And then if you want, we can finish tidying up some of this. So You have to have a little excess because this has to be able to pull out, obviously. But anything beyond just being able to pull the glove box out, we can just tie up. So then put this down here. One little trick on installing the glove box, there's 3 tabs right here. You have to make sure all those 3 tabs are pushed down. There we go. Then you don't have to do this part yet. If you want to make sure everything's working correctly, we can wait for this part. But if you don't want to wait, you can put the screws in right now. Finish up the dash. Okay, so if you want to, I like to start with everything turned all the way down. So I'm turning my volume control all the way down. I'm turning my ACR1, my bass knob, all the way down. So counterclockwise to the left. So that's all turned down. Alrighty, so everything should theoretically start working when we turn the card on. There's just a couple things I wanted to show you before we turn the card on. We're not having the center pod mounted down yet because we want to make sure that we can alleviate any type of shaking, rattling noises with the sub. And it's best to do so testing the sub without this installed. Make sure we're not getting any rattling noises, which we shouldn't, as long as everything's tight in the cart. Then we can use some of the Dynamat we provided, and we'll show you some of the tricks we do on this center pod to help alleviate any of that possibly shaking from the sub. Because again, it's a lot of pressure there underneath your seat. So that's one reason that's still like that. Another reason is your ground strap. We applied this. It has a little open-end eyelet on the one end. We screw it right to the frame, right above the factory voltage reducer. And it can go anywhere in the frame. You can screw to the frame anywhere, as long as it's screwed to the frame and it's on raw metal. It can't be on powder coat. If it's just touching powder coat, that normally won't help. It has to be on raw metal, which in other words is why we normally bolt it to an actual bolt that's on the frame, because it's touching the raw steel of the frame. So the ground strap, it depends on the cart. We never know. Every cart's different. You might need the ground strap coming out of the power plate. You might not. So don't just apply that for nothing. Make sure to turn your cart on first and see if it helps your noise, because it could cause noise if you don't need it. Before we turn the cart on, what I like to do, just to properly tune the system and just make sure everything's working correctly, I turn my bass knob all the way down, so counterclockwise. I also turn my volume control all the way down, counterclockwise. I do all that, and then what we're gonna do, turn the cart on. Everything should click on as usual. And in the written instructions, I provide how to do your EQ on your screen. This is different than how we provide the EQ on your level 1 or level 2 screen. This is very different because the system is entirely different than the level 1 and level 2 system, mainly because of this guy. So we tune it. So this is tuning mostly the factory speakers. Then all the tuning in our speakers in the sub is done by the power plate. So once we get this up and going, we're gonna wait here for it to click on. I'm waiting for Android Auto to turn on. And let's see, I got my LED button. I can turn that on real quick. LEDs are working, so that's good. So Android Auto is up and running now, so I could turn my volume down a little bit. That's playing. Now before I want to get crazy, and before I get crazy on playing this really loud, I want to make sure my EQ is correct. So again, this is set to the exact settings I provide in our written instructions. So we don't have to adjust this on how we done it. It's still exactly the same. But please refer to the written instructions. Look for that's all on one sheet on the EQ, how you set that. We've spent quite a bit of time on that, making sure it's correct. So go through that. Then you can have some fun with actually trying out some real bass. So I'm getting ready to play a song that has some good bass to it. So I'm going to test everything as I start to hit play. I'm going to feel the speakers underneath the seats here, make sure those are playing. If the speakers in the dash are playing, you'll definitely be able to hear those. And again, everything's probably going to work for you. It's just a matter of checking this stuff before it's fully done. And then we're also going to make sure I'm cranking the bass knob. So I turn the bass knob all the way up. And I'm making sure I'm not getting any weird, crazy, annoying rattling right now, how it's set up. And if I'm not, then we can move forward to installing the center pod. and make sure that's not gonna do any rattling as well. So I'm gonna start playing some tunes. So, and again, if you feel the speakers, you can tell if they're playing underneath the seats. So I'm feeling that. I can tell the sub's playing, so. Is I take underneath here all these pieces that click in, put Dynamat around these pieces that snap down in here of the body. I put that in there, and then I've already put the Dynamat on this, by the way. So you'll get Dynamat pieces. I already put Dynamat on those, and I formed it around it. And now it's gonna take some more effort to click it down here, but make sure this is going underneath here. And again, make sure you're keeping track of your quick pens. Okay. Make sure we're not pinching any wires. So you can get some of those wires that were from underneath the, you can get the wires that go to those grills. You can get them pinched underneath the center pod there. You don't want that to happen. So snapping this all into place, nothing's pinched there. Everything looks good. So we can take some of our screws we took out earlier. Take your push pins that you pulled out of the front as well. So I'm gonna screw this down. Put all your screws back in. Put all your push pins back in. And now, we should still not be getting any noise. Nothing. No rattling noises at all. However, which way you want to tune the system, right now, that gain knob on the bass is completely maxed. So it's going to be really thumping no matter what volume you're really listening to. And bass is what carries, so people be able to hear you from freaking 200 feet away at a minimum. So, we really wanted to make sure that we had this bass knob provided on this next Premier system we built for people because, it's one thing to be driving in the middle of the day, jamming your music, going to the pool, the bar, whatever you're going to, but coming home at night, you don't want to be jamming like that, So you can tune that however which way you want. And again, just so you understand, the EQ on the screen, the EQ is mainly to equalize the soundbar and the factory speakers, which I know it's Memphis speakers now, but that's telling these things what to do. As far as our speakers in the sub, most of that's going on, most of the tuning is coming from this equipment. So, but what you do is we're trying to make sure we don't need any type of mid bass from the factory stuff now at all. So we're essentially tuning it so it's taking mid bass out of the factory stuff, and because you're getting plenty of mid bass from obviously the sub and from our speakers. And these speakers in the soundbar can't handle a ton of mid bass anyways. That's why we tune it the way we do. That way they're not distorting. That way they're not blowing. Because if you're cranking up the EQ, the bass on the EQ on this, you're going to start to ask your speakers and soundbar to play frequencies that they're not really built to play. And if you're doing that, you're going to slowly blow your stuff. So we tune it like this, so it's not going to blow anything. It's not going to distort your anything in your cart, and it's going to play very clean, very loud, and very clear and distortion free is the goal. So if you're still watching, I applaud your attention to detail, because this has been a pretty long video. So, but in terms of installing an awesome sound system like this, it actually went pretty dang quick. Because if I was showing you how to DIY this whole thing, this would have been a 3-day video. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, if you saw anything in this video that doesn't add up to your cart, doesn't look the same, just running into challenges you haven't seen in this cart, you haven't seen in the written instructions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. But we tried to be as thorough in this as possible to show you exactly what you need to do. And I think it's always worth saying to just do a one more look over, look under the cart, make sure no wires are hanging out, make sure just, zip ties are where they need to be. You know, your ground strap, make sure your ground strap's not hanging out somewhere and just hang it, you know, touching anything on the frame, hanging off the ground. You know, just go through everything, make sure everything's good to go. And as far as XK Glow is concerned, you know, I've got that, you can tell it's all hooked up because the speakers are lighting up right now. And as far as XK Glow for instructions, you just have to refer to the written instructions to show you the roof glows and the underglows. But yeah, thanks for watching, and thank you for supporting BA Carts.